Well, good morning, everyone. Again, welcome to session 3 of the 2020 Virtual Kentucky K12 Technical Summit. We are on track 2 here, and at this time, we have a discussion about Office 365 security. During this discussion, please feel free to bring up comments and questions via our live chat, or you can use Twitter hashtag Kentucky Techs and include a T3. I'm sorry, a T2. Sorry, we're in track 2 for track 2 in your message. Also, we encourage you to tweet out quotes, awesome moments, and things to remember using the hashtag Kentucky Techs or at ERATCKY during the session. There will be an exit survey at the end. Don't forget to do that if you need ELA credit, or you can also count on a chance for that door prize thanks to our friends at Prosys. So a couple good reasons there to fill out that survey at the end. Now on to our team. Please give us a brief introduction of each of you and take it away.
All right. Thanks for having me, guys, and good morning. My name is Trey Grider, and I'm the network engineer for Adair County. And I appreciate you guys letting me come and try to share a few words here, which I know there's a lot of good people in our region. So hopefully I'll learn something from you guys as well here. But here in Adair, we have the actual A1 license for our Office 365 tenant, and a big discussion that I've heard between a lot of people is that you can't be as powerful with the A1 license unless you upgrade to the A3 or the A5 or, so on and so forth. But I just wanted to go through and just maybe highlight and point out some of the security features and some of the things that we do here that has worked really, has been really successful for us. And, maybe it'll help you guys out too if you find yourself in the same type of bonds that we did. So without any ado here, I'm going to switch over to my tenant screen to kind of give you a visual as we go through some things here.
And while you're doing that, while you're pulling your screen up, Trey, I'll introduce myself. I'm Randy Bailey with Letcher County, CIO. When Trey finishes up what he's going to show us here with what he does with an A1 license, I'll piggyback off that and do some things that I do with an A3 license as well.
Sounds great. That sounds great. Can you guys see my screen okay here?
I do not see it.
Okay. Let me try to. Just bear with me for 1 second. Okay, how's that?
Still nothing.
Huh. Okay. Let's see.
It looks like it's trying now.
We got it? Okay, awesome. Okay. Well, I'm sure everybody has seen this screen 1,000 times and probably can memorize everything on it in your sleep because you've been in here so much. But just really quickly, one thing that I'd like to touch on first, and I'm not going to go through everything because it's just so robust and so much. I just want to point out some of the key aspects and some of the key security features that we use. But the main thing is starting out under the Exchange tab under Admin Centers here. Okay, and then from here, I'd like to go under our Protection tab. And here is where you can manage all kind of filters based off of malware, any kind of malicious threats that you like, or messages that you deem malicious anyway. You can create all kind of catch-alls or specific type of filters or rules to really mitigate that risk of your employees or your principals or any kind of admin staff being phished there. You can actually block by sender, and you can actually block by domain as well. And then this quarantine tab here, if it'll pull up, as you can see, just from some of the policies and some of the rules that we have in place here, you can see some of the messages that it deemed suspicious or they thought it was malicious. So it went ahead and quarantined for us, which it looks like, in my opinion, it does a pretty good job. I kind of go through there and monitor that pretty often. So, okay, let me back up here. Bear with me. My machine, of course, it wants to have a mind of its own at the moment here. Okay, here we go. So, and then moving on to the next one here, under the mail flow tab, this one has been a pretty significant tool for us to use here and there anyway, or this has always worked for us. This is where you can create really all kind of customization type of things, like an email disclaimer from any kind of emails that come from outside of your domain or organization. You can make it a big box that says, hey, this is from somewhere else. Be aware, be vigilant, make sure it's nothing malicious there. And then as you can see over in this area, this is just a little piece of the HTML code that we use, for our little email banners to notify the staff of what they're looking at, or if it's something safe inside the district, or if it's from an external address there. Okay. And then honestly, without A1 license, those are really just the biggest things that I felt like that were free to use, obviously, and they had the most impact. There's a lot of stuff that unfortunately we don't get to utilize for some of those tools that will give us that granular insight because of our type of license, which we're upgrading. But as of right now, it kind of limits us pretty well there. So, but let's see if we can back out here. Let's go, and we're going to navigate under the security tab. And yeah, if anybody has any questions anytime, just feel free to, stop me and let me know, or if you want to wait, it does not matter to me. Okay, so as you probably know, Microsoft has kind of revamped or done a major UI upgrade to all of their little GUI interfaces or to their websites. And in my opinion, it's been pretty helpful, but of course it takes a second to get used to where everything is at now, but I like how they kind of centralized all of the main tools that you would use, I guess, normally here on the actual home screen, as in the GDPR dashboard, the information governance dashboard. All of these insights are great information, and they kind of centralized it there. And one thing in particular that I was really not aware of until I was aware of it, but not the importance of it, was until Kisty. I talked to someone that was giving a session. I can't remember his name, and I wish I could give him the credit here. But he did a whole session over Secure Score. And so once I seen that, and I went in and started checking our Secure Score, and I kind of see the 52 out of the 238. And I was like, wow, well, we're not doing, I guess, not as good of a job that I thought we were. But that's obviously based on the type of license you have. If you have the lowest license, you're not going to be able to get to the 238 there. But the Secure Score is a great tool, and I'm going to touch on that a little bit later for sure. But I just kind of want to point that out since it's right there centralized on that home screen. So, okay. And next, I'm going to go under the Data Loss Prevention tab, and then under the Policy tab. Take a look here. Okay, so see, these are some of the policies that we have in place to really just to protect our people more or less, and protect their personal data and their financial data, in any kind of sensitive information. As you can see, the U.S. financial data policy So if anybody is entering credit card information inside of an email, social security, any kind of sensitive data, that email is going to be flagged. It's not going to be sent. It's going to be quarantined, and it's going to be waiting for our review to see, you know, what's going on or see why I decided to deem that as a, you know, as a threat or potential threat anyway. Same thing for the HIPAA. Everybody I'm sure knows of HIPAA. So just following those guidelines there, and then also the state breach laws there. So data loss prevention has been a very, very, very key component in keeping our tenant, you know, healthy and managing our emails and all kind of good stuff there. So. Okay, next I'm just going to navigate through the threat management dashboard. And really, I'm a big fan of the threat management dashboard, specifically after after Microsoft has really centralized all of this information here on one screen. So you don't have to click 1,000 places like that. That's been very, very helpful in my opinion. But you can quickly just click on that tab and just get some rough insights of maybe a simple question you was wondering, or, you know, just anything like that. But as you can see, these graphs are fantastic. Okay. And then under this review tab, this is where anything that gets quarantined, any kind of messages, any kind of users submitted phishing emails or malware or any kind of malicious threats, all of these are going to be pushed into quarantine. And then this was where we would go through and deem, okay, was this a legit email that was expected from an outside source that was that needs to get through, that they need, or is it just a phishing email or someone trying to socially engineer one of our employees? But this area here is where you'd go through and kind of manage all that good stuff. Same thing for restricted users. Obviously, pretty self-explanatory. Malware detected in email. The user reported messages. Yeah, all kind of good stuff. And you get way more stuff I've seen in other Office 365 security sessions. But like I said, since we just have the A1, we're pretty limited here, unfortunately. But hopefully that's going to change soon there. But under the policy tab here, all of these, as you can tell by the names, are just really significant. But we didn't add any any rules or any permissions, you know, customized to our own liking. We just used the default policies that were there because we felt like those were really sufficient, and you know, sounded like they covered everything we need anyway. So why work harder, you know, if it's not needed? So we just left all of this stuff default, but we just turned the services on and put them in effect, and they worked great ever since. So, and I will say, like, our phishing and social engineering problem, like insights on that, I mean, the percentage has gone way down thanks to all these new features by Microsoft. So I'm actually a big fan of all the cybersecurity upgrade, like absolutely. But I definitely would encourage everyone to at least bare minimum go in and check your anti-phishing permissions and settings and rules, just to see what's enabled, if there's anything enabled, because like I said, by default there's some really good ones in there. And even just by clicking that box and turning that on, I'm sure you could probably cut your numbers in half for your social engineering attacks and other attacks there. So let me navigate back here. There we go. Okay, so next, the next tab I clicked on was just the search and then the context search. This is where if we know that if we have 100 employees report that, okay, we've all gotten the same email, it looks fishy, it doesn't look right, we know it's bad news. But if they send it to our whole staff list that they got somewhere online or that's public record, this is where we could go to actually search for the actual like everyone's inbox. We can go through and see, okay, search for criteria for words that were in the email. So if it's a phishing email saying, hey, this is business A and you need to pay your invoice of $10,000, and we know that that's complete bogus, we could use that criteria, just words from the email or by user or by any of that, search here, and then we have actual PowerShell scripts that are running in the background. So once we search for this criteria here, the actual PowerShell scripts that we have in place will do the work and go through and either delete, remove the email, or whatever action that we need to happen. You know, all like the PowerShell scripts will handle that. So, but yeah, as you can see, for some reason, it seems like our principals like to be targeted a lot by the phishing emails here. So, as you can see, there's a few times we've had to do a few searches for there. So. But this is a great tool, especially if you're somewhat familiar with PowerShell, or you know have an idea on how to kind of configure some scripts. Not even writing from scratch, but there's all kind of free templates, or at least like source code that would give you an idea to where you can make some scripts, do some pretty cool stuff from this to make your life way easier. Okay, let me navigate back. Oh, and okay, yeah, and then as I was speaking earlier about the secure score, as I try to wrap up just here in a few minutes here, this is where Microsoft basically, well, it's weird because the security score used to be kind of embedded with all of its details and insights kind of under its own tab, but it looks like by going to security.microsoft.com, to me, that's the quickest way to navigate to it now. So that's just like the route I've always went. But the reason I love this tool, even though we don't have the, like I said, the A3 or A5 license, it doesn't show a lot of data that I would love to see, but it at least shows you, okay, here's your secure score. Here's what we recommend, what we think you need to do based off of priority and importance. How to improve your score, view your history. There's really all kind of great insights inside here that will let you like bring you like step by step closer to making your tenant completely cyber secure. Although that is a myth, right? We're never fully cyber secure, but we always just try to be better than the cyber criminal. So, but yeah, reports, you can get, like I said, get all kind of great insights. Actually gives you more detailed insights. Like I said, actually going through and giving you the recommendations of what you need to do and what. And then rank it, by importance there. So, and then obviously there's the history. So, I mean, these are priceless in my opinion, for sure. Same tab. Really not too sure what the difference is between these two. Besides maybe just some small details, but yeah. But up here, if you look at these tabs, the improvement and actions, I mean, like, awesome insights, the history, and the metrics and trends there. So, and then obviously you can create your labels and retention labels and all of that type of stuff. And one thing that I didn't mention actually was that Another good feature that I really enjoy with Microsoft now is the actual retention, and that's helped us out so much following, the state law about, having to have retention for certain type of business records for 2 years, and then, um, non-essential or non-business, type of information, for 30 days or so. I can't remember the exact numbers, but we actually created labels for that to make sure that we are following the law and we're doing exactly what we're supposed to. And it saved us by, if we ever needed to try, go back and find something like that's been a lifesaver for us as well. And then under policies here, as you can see, self-explanatory. You can really customize as much as you want. From O365, I mean, cloud app security to all of the phishing type of threats that would come your way. So, I mean, we could speak on and on and on and on about all of the features Microsoft has added, and it is absolutely amazing. And it's even better with the higher license. And I hate that we're not there yet, but we should be very soon. So with that being said, I think I'll maybe pass it over to my good buddy there, Mr. Bailey, so he can talk about the his type of license and what he has going on there.
Okay, Brandon, do we have any questions at this point before we transition? Just checking to.
No, not that I'm seeing at the moment. I think everything's been handled thus far.
Okay, awesome. Well, if anybody has any questions, I mean, feel free to email me. Email straightforward. I'm sure it's going to be somewhere listed on the information, but trey.grider@adair.kyschools.us.
Okay, I'm going to take over sharing now, so let me know, Brandon, if you can see my screen.
Looks good to me.
Okay, so starting out here, we do have an A3 license. So there's a couple really important things with an A3 license that I want to touch on. Typically most people go to the Microsoft 365 Admin Center to get started. So from there, if you click on the Security Admin Center, which Trey's already had us in the Security Admin Center, when you go there, under the Alerts tab, under Manage Advanced Alerts, you'll see if you have the A3 license, actually you don't even have to have the A3 license. As long as you have an Azure AD Premium 1 license or 2, then you can enable the part that's called Cloud App Security. Now, since mine has already been enabled, it gives me a link to go to Cloud App Security. If yours has never been enabled before, you'll click on Enable Cloud App Security, and then you'll have to give it about 48 hours before you can actually get into it and start navigating and doing things with it. It takes the information from Azure's security information and audit logs and so forth and pulls those in and analyzes those. And as time goes on, you get better information with this. So I'm going to take you into my Cloud App Security. I've already gone there. I've got it pulled up in another tab. And as you'll see, when we hit the landing page, we start looking at some policies that are out there that can be applied in real time, essentially, to our users. Now, these policies are pretty much all default policies that are already built in there. All you have to do is enable them. By default, I think with pretty much all these policies, global admins receive email messages when one of these policies are triggered. I think you can add additional alerts, but some of the ones that are most important to me is when I start getting accounts that are possibly compromised. So essentially, if you look over here, you see on the left side, and this may or may not be really visible, the little number 14. It's showing I currently have 14 alerts that I've not done anything with. Now, when I click on these alerts, it will actually show me, what those different alerts are. So the first one here that is listed says an impossible travel activity. So the way this is set up is, if somebody logs in from the United States and then somebody logs in from China within an hour of each other, obviously you could not travel from the United States to China in an hour and actually, really do that and be there. So that gets flagged as an impossible travel activity. When I look at this particular person happens to be a teacher in my district. So that really, really concerns me when I see an impossible travel activity for a teacher. So when I click on this alert to take a little more detailed look at it, I come down here and it says, okay, this person accessed a file and truly gained access to that file from the United States at 10 a.m. on the 27th of May. Then at 9:41 a.m. from China, it was a failed logon attempt. So now that I see that was a failed logon attempt, I'm okay. There's really nothing I need to do. It doesn't show me that the account has been compromised. However, if I go back to these alerts and I look at, I'm going to jump down here to some student accounts. When I look at, and I'm trying to get one down the list a little bit, when I look at these student accounts, I see that this was a true logon from Thailand. Now that's really, really concerning for me. That can happen in a multitude of ways, but first of all, that account's probably been hacked. So I need to do something to mitigate that account. In essence, I need to initiate a password change on that account. As you may or may not know, in instigating a password change, that can be done multiple ways, and it depends on what all you have set up, and that may be farther than we want to go today. But typically, I would do that password change from Active Directory. Now, when I do a password change from Active Directory, I typically will change to the DC3 server, the cloud server, because the synchronization time from that DC server to the Azure cloud is only 2 minutes. If you change it on DC1 or GC1, then you could have a period of 20-some minutes before it synchronizes from those local controllers out to the cloud controller where the sync to the cloud service actually happens. And then after I sync to that cloud service, I wait and I watch my Azure security logs to make sure that that password change has gone through, and then I initiate a sign out on that account. Because even if you change the password and you don't force people out of the account, then they could continue using that account for up to 90 days before that service forces them to re-authenticate again. So there are specific procedures for how to do that and how to go about that. It can be done from a PowerShell script. It can be done from the OneNote tab on the Office 365 or M365 Admin Center users page. Several places that you can look at that, and if we've got time at the end, I'll double back and maybe show you a little more detail on that. But that's one of the things that's really concerning for me. When we got toward the end of May, if you look at a bunch of these accounts or a bunch of these rule hits down through here, you'll see that a lot of this happened toward the end of May. The hackers just turned it on even more so when they found out we were all working from home and they knew kids were using accounts from home. We don't force the 15-character passwords on our students that we do on our teachers. As soon as I put in place that 15-character password, I've had very few teachers that truly have had an account compromised. But I have student accounts compromised all the time. So that's one of the things that Cloud App Security is very good at doing, is letting you know about accounts that may have been compromised. Now, if you don't have Cloud App Security turned on, you can go to the Azure portal. And if you go to the Azure portal and go to security, so if I'm on here and I go to security, then some of the things that I can look at under security are risky sign-ins. When I look at risky sign-ins, it shows me a list of sign-ins that could be questionable. You know, are they legitimate? Do they, you know, there's something that makes them not be exactly good for the system. So some of these will be explainable. Some of them will not be explainable. A lot of the times what I see with students is I see students trying to use VPNs to get around services. And when they try to use a VPN that comes from a foreign country, then that will trigger a lot of these alerts sometimes and show us some of those risky sign-ins. So just keep in mind that that's kind of a way to pick up a little bit on VPN usage within your district or outside your district even then. One of the other things that I recommend, if you have the Azure AD1 Azure ADP1 license, is that you use conditional access. Now with conditional access, you can do multiple things in here, but the first thing that I did is I put in a rule that says we're going to block everything from outside the United States. When I started looking at my logs and looking at the attempts on accounts, I pulled my superintendent's account up the first time I ever looked at this, and within the last 7 days, there was like 5,000 attempts to log into their account from foreign countries. So the first thing I did is I created a rule that essentially uses a named location, and it says I'm excluding the one location for the United States. So I block everything unless it's coming from the United States. That's one way to do that. So that immediately cut down on the number of actual breaches that I get from outside the United States. Now, you may say, well, you just showed me a breach a minute ago that still happened from a foreign country, even though you've got a conditional policy in that says don't let it happen from a foreign country. Well, in that case, a lot of what you're going to see is hack attempts that come from legacy applications. I created this rule called block legacy applications, and this is one of the things that will greatly improve the secure score that Trey talked about earlier, is if you actually block legacy applications. So when you set up one of these policies, you can either turn that policy on in report only mode, you can actually turn it on, or you can have it turned off. I put this particular policy in place and put it in report only mode because I wanted to look and see how many people were actually using legacy applications legitimately, and how many people would I disrupt. Now, when you talk about legacy applications, a lot of times you're talking about POP3 service, you're talking about IMAP, you're talking about older authentication mechanisms. The one thing that kind of jumped out at me is anything prior to Microsoft Office 2013 uses a legacy login application. So when I started monitoring this service, I started finding machines that I thought we had already upgraded the Office version on that we hadn't. We'd missed them for some reason. So had I just enabled this policy, I would have essentially stopped all those machines from working, and they wouldn't have been able to check their email from those machines had they have not gone to webmail or something. So, I've used this for a variety of reasons, but looking at the log files and doing these reports and looking at the reports that show in the Azure AD windows, you can look very quickly and And I'm trying to see if I even have the column turned on, and I do not see it currently, but wasn't really prepared to go start looking at all that. But you'll notice here in Azure AD, you can also look at the identity secure score. You can do some other authentication methods. You can look at the named locations. One of the other big things that I'll hit on really quickly here is that with multi-factor authentication, we apply multi-factor authentication based on conditional access. So by doing this, I can identify a group that's in my local on-prem Active Directory. That group is synchronized out to Azure Active Directory, and any user I put in that group automatically has multi-factor authentication assigned to them. So instead of me having to assign multi-factor authentication to everybody in the domain, if I only wanted to assign it to just the principals and those that request it, and the central office administrators and those people that are at a higher risk of being phished, I can essentially put them in a local group. It will essentially apply that multi-factor authentication requirement to them. It will have them identify their information for multi-factor the next time they log in, and then they're off and running with multi-factor authentication. One of the things that I also do with multi-factor authentication is that I do not require it if they're using a computer that's inside my network. So, if they're sitting at their office and doing stuff, multi-factor authentication is not required. It's a trusted computer. It's got our virus protections on it. All of that is available to them, so we don't require them to do the second factor of authentication. The very instant they walk outside the doors and they use their cell phone, or they go to a hotel, or they are somewhere else, or if someone is trying to hack their account, then multi-factor authentication is required. And that sometimes is good. If you try to get a hack attempt from outside, then you kind of know that somebody's trying to get in your account. If you didn't try to log in and you get a message on your device saying, hey, I need you to, are you really trying to log in? Then you have the opportunity to say, start thinking, is somebody trying to hack into my account, and where are they doing it from, and so forth, and more research can be done at that point. But those are just, a couple quick things that I want to point out that we have the availability to do if you have the A3 or even the Azure AD Premium 1 license, is that, you have the opportunity to enable the cloud app security. It uses the Azure AD security events that you get from Azure AD Premium 1, and it lets you have rules that report via email to you, so you know immediately when something happens. You also can do the conditional access, and you can do the risky sign-in, the risky users kind of stuff, and look at those. And those are some things that will beef your security score up just a little bit. If I jump back over here, just trying to even remember where I was going. This one, I believe, is the tab I was looking for. So if you look at my secure score, notice that Trey's only had a possibility of 200 and something. Mine has a possibility of 303 because I have additional things that I can do because of my license. But you'll see my secure score is sitting at 59 or something. And if I go directly to that page that he was on, my secure score is a little bit higher than his, but you'll notice that, we've had a little bit of regression and some stuff because of, just being the end of the school year. But you'll see a lot of the stuff that's in here are the same things that like this enable multi-factor authentication for administrative roles. Now, I don't get credit for that because I didn't use Microsoft's built-in policy to do that. I use my own policy to require that. So I'm doing that with a different policy that doesn't automatically get me that additional score. But I've got it says right here, if I enable self-service password reset, then that'll give me some additional points. Well, I do have self-service password reset enabled, but it's only for a certain group of users. I don't enable that for kindergarten students, for example. That's a little too complicated for kindergarten students to know how to either put in a cell phone number or an email address or answer security questions or do some of those features. So, I do more than this, but I don't necessarily always get credit for everything that I do. I could go in and manually check off on some of these things and increase that score, but at this point, I just haven't taken the time to do that. Okay. At this point, I'll go ahead and stop. And if anybody's got questions, if you want more details on any particular thing, we'll address those.
Randy, there was one question that came up, and I'm sorry I didn't really catch the context. I think you were in the Azure cloud, and Gary Crawford said this can be turned on with having A1 license, and he asked that in the form of a question. So I don't know if that's what he was talking about specifically, but was any of this that you discussed in some form under the A1 licenses?
Everything that I have discussed, whether it be conditional access or being able to see accounts where or countries where accounts are logged in from, or turning on the cloud app security, or anything I've talked about requires a minimum of an Azure AD Premium 1 license. That is bundled in with your A3 license if you own A3. It is not accessible from just an A1 license. So everything I've talked about goes above and beyond the A1 and goes into the A3 arena there.
Yeah, that is correct. Yes, sir.
Good deal. That's really all the questions I see. I will make one content just because I had to be in the content search quite a bit here over the last, I'd say about 6 to 8 months, is that KDE actually sent me a document, a PDF, on some guidance of how to use keywords. So if you're a PowerShell user, but you're wanting to use some of the GUI, the keywords can almost be built like a PowerShell script with not so much of the complexity. So if you don't like using the add conditions and you build it like a tower of conditions there, the keywords can be leveraged, and I don't have that handy, and these guys could probably talk on it much more than I could, but I was happy to see that you could go within the interface and build that keyword out. I thought that was really neat.
Yes, sir. I agree. Yes, sir.
One thing that I'll caution you on with a lot of those keywords, before you take action on any search that you run, verify what is in that, because it can a lot of times pull in stuff that you wouldn't expect it to.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, make sure that you don't go out and just say, I'm going to delete everything that it finds without you're sure that you really want to delete those, because your superintendent can get pretty mad after your email disappears from a delete. Especially if you're trying to look for attachments. If you're trying to look for specific attachments, I have had very poor results in it finding the right attachment. It does too much of a fuzzy search, and it pulls in too many documents that I've never been really comfortable in deleting straight from one of those searches without seriously verifying first.
Yeah. Yeah, and that kind of goes back to my point too, that the keywords can be pretty powerful, and it will go if you tell it to run.
Very much so.
It'll do exactly what you tell it to do.
That's very true. Well, guys, thank you so much, and we're going to post in the chat here the link to this Google Meet in case there's some one-on-one time or some additional questions. I know we're right before lunch, so we'll just take that for a brief moment, but I'm going to put up the slides here just so folks will be able to see that.